Alrighty guys, we're back for No Breaks Mono White, and this is a Murders at Karlov Manor standard brew, and I'm Red Cat. Let's go over the deck, then hop right into some ranked. First things first, this was a patron suggestion. Thank you so much for the suggestion. It's gonna be a fun one. We're rocking cards like Case of the Gateway Express. This is a 2-mana enchantment case, and when it enters the battlefield, you choose target creature you don't control. Each creature you control deals 1 damage to that creature. That's a pretty sick ability, man. Now, to solve this, 3 or more creatures attacked this turn. If it's unsolved, you solve it at the beginning of your end step. That should be pretty easy to solve in this build in particular. And then when it is solved, creatures you control get +1/+0, which of course could be really useful in a build like this that should be able to go wide. Now, we do have a whole bunch of 1-drops packed in, so it is very much like a mono white Weenies list. We got all 4 cheeky house mouse. This is a 2-mana, 2/1 mouse. And that's all we need. But it also has Squeak By on the adventure side. Target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. It can't be blocked by creatures with power 3 or greater this turn. That's pretty sick, dude. And just plugging like an extra +1/+1 on something could help you potentially like get the training through on Hopeful Initiate or whatnot. Also, it quite literally helps you squeak by every now and then if the opponent only has like a Sheoldred to block with or something, right? Now, all 4 Hopeful Initiates in here probably going to be terrific, especially when we have cards that instantly train it up like Recruitment Officer, of course. Also, just being able to potentially clean up artifacts or enchantments really does come in handy. And we have cards like Novice Inspector here. It's a 1-mana 1/2, and when it enters the battlefield, you investigate. Now, the clue is not a bad thing to potentially help us restock our hand, but it also goes the extra mile to have extra permanence on the board when you have cards like Warden of the Inner Sky, a 1-mana 1/2 human soldier. As long as Warden of the Inner Sky has 3 or more counters on it, it has flying and vigilance. Actually, a lot easier to get those counters than you would expect. You can tap 3 untapped artifacts and or creatures you control, and you put a +1/+1 counter on Warden of the Inner Sky. You scry 1, and you get to only activate this as a sorcery. Thank goodness, though, for that, right? We've been seeing a huge uptick in the amount of Warden of the Inner Sky being played, especially in Boros. It does seem to be a powerhouse of a card. Now, those extra permanents off of Novice Inspector is also going to go a long way with cards like Regal Bunnicorn, a 2-mana. Its power and toughness are each equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. But none of that matters because it's a rabbit unicorn, which is the main reason we're playing with it. Okay, we also have Invasion of Gobakhan in here, the 2-mana Battle Siege, which I'm surprised we don't get to see too often. It has 3 defense counters on it. Now, when it enters the battlefield, you look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land card from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, its owner may play it. A spell cast this way costs 2 more to cast. So you want to go ahead, peer into the opponent's hand, and make their Brotherhood's End cost 2 more. Or you want to peer into the opponent's hand, make their Depopulate cost 2 more, or Sunfall, or Board Wipes is essentially what I'm getting at here, or just like terrific blockers, or anything like that. And then flipping this shouldn't be too bad either, since it's only 3 defense counters. When you flip it into Light Shield Array, it's also just a really good enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature that attacked this turn. Then you can sacrifice this at any time. Creatures you control gain hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Light Shield Array is kind of nuts, man. And then that's just another way to put +1/+1 counters on cards like Warden of the Inner Sky, which of course really likes having +1/+1 counters on it. Now, our removal in here is also going to be an artifact removal that we can use with that Warden of the Inner Sky ability. Glass Casket is what I opted for. So this is a 2-mana artifact. And when it enters the battlefield, exile target creature an opponent controls with mana value 3 or less until Glass Casket leaves the battlefield. Hopefully we're putting on so much pressure that anything mana value 4 or more is struggling to maintain itself on the board or get down on the board to begin with, as we're just constantly swinging in, right? Now, the suggestion, no breaks for a reason. We just keep on slamming face every turn. We just do our dandiest to swing on in. That's the goal. And so Glass Casket is hopefully going to be enough of removal for that style of build. We have ways to buff our wide board state. I'm hesitant to call it wide sometimes, but with all these 1 mana cards just dumping out of our hand onto the board, I do think we're going to get wide easily. In the trenches, 3 mana, enchantment, creatures you control get +1/+1. Nice. Every now and then we might end up flooding out, and for 5 and a white, you can exile target non-land permanent you don't control until In the Trenches leaves the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery and only once. Not a bad card at all. Kind of feels underplayed sometimes. We also have Knight-Errant of Eos. Same concept, dude. We should kind of sort of be able to go wide in here just by dumping our 1-drops. So Knight-Errant should be a great way to go ahead and restock our hand with even more 1-drops to go ahead and play, right? We also have Virtue of Loyalty in here too, acting as instant speed adventure side most of the time, and every now and then we'll get to that 5 mana or the enchantment side, and being able to untap all of our creatures after tapping down for like Warden of the Inner Skies ability is really, really good. Outside of that, just like a 2/2 Vigilant Knight for 2, it just isn't bad by any means. And that is also a thing that you can do on the opponent's turn after they do something like drop a board wipe too. So reestablishing our board state right away. In the mana base, we have 20 total lands. One of them is a Mishra's Foundry. One of them is a Seat of the Empire. Having some utility land is pretty good. Why not like 2 Mishra's Foundries? Because there's going to be so many turns where you want to do like 2 to 3 different white mana things. And if you end up getting a couple Mishra's Foundries on the board, I think that's going to hold you up way more than just having a utility piece that can swing in, you know? Okay, guys, honorable mentions. Hotshot Mechanic was in the original suggested list, I believe. Yotian Frontliner, same concept. I thought about Intrepid Adversary for the list. It did not make the cut. Actually got traded out from Invasion of Gobakhan, which I think is going to do a little bit more than Intrepid Adversary. Okay, Ossification was in the original list. I opted for Glass Casket to be able to tap down for the Warden of the Inner Sky, but Ossification is so darn powerful that that might very well have been a mistake. Then Shrouded Shepherd, also in the original list, and could be a great budget trade out for anything that you don't have in here, especially if they're in the 2-drop spots, or like Virtue of Loyalty, for example. If you don't have these, you can totally trade that out. Shrouded Shepherd seems like a pretty solid pick. Okay, guys, hopefully that's everything. Relatively easy list to go over. Oh, I missed something. Skrelv. For Skrelv, making the cut as a 2-of, going to be an excellent one. Excellent protection, excellent to help us slip damage through. Just a great 1-drop overall. Okay, guys, now, hopefully that's everything. Let's go ahead, take it into some ranked, and see how we do. All right, we'll see if we can get right into the first game here. Heck yeah, we do. In the meantime, though, what am I expecting from the build? Yeah, I think it's going to be great. I think this deck is going to be pretty powerful, man. Oh, we'll see. We'll see. Opponent goes first. Okay. Now, this is a keepable hand, I would say. The 3 mana, like, hopefully we just don't see mana for a couple turns here. Recruitment Officer. Cheeky House Mouse. Okay. Warden of the Inner Sky is totally fine to start with, right? Or would we want to start with Novice Inspector and then Warden next turn if we planned on tapping things down? A Skrelv for protection? Oh, Ossification right into the Warden. So I suppose Inspector would have been a little better. Now we can double down on the Inspectors, though. Look at that. It was probably Skrelv. The Skrelv would have been picked up by the Ossification, too. So Skrelv, Inspector. Dump some permanents on the board. You guys can see like why I want to call it like going wide for this build, but at the same time I just feel hesitant to say go wide when we don't have cards in here that like get 2 like 1/1s on the board when it's played or something. You know what I mean? Case of the Gateway Express number 2 is going to be fantastic. We'll get our Skrelv back. Cheeky House Mouse is available too. If I wanted to swing here instead, I'd rather just offer that trade into the Recruitment Officer though. Skrelv comes back. Swing. I think they just take the 1. Really? I'm actually a little bit taken aback by that, guys. What was that about? I mean, I guess it depends how much excess removal they ended up having in hand. But, like, they didn't know if, like, these were just planes or something. Yeah, we had a couple options. I went for just dumping creatures onto the board. See, we could have done, like, Squeak By to get a little bit more damage through with the Inspector. Just made a little bit more sense to get Inspector down. Or we could have just played the 2-1 too. But, yeah. Now, keeping that in hand, potentially using that adventure side. Potentially flipping case next turn. So if they were out of removal, they looked at our board, said, okay, there's 3 creatures. They flip that, they buff everything. They're going to keep dumping creatures. I don't know, man. I don't know. I really wish they didn't concede there. GG, though. I'll take the victory. Victories are really hard to come by sometimes. Wait a minute. Did I get the new pet upgrade and I didn't equip it yet? Oh no, guys. I think I got the new mole that's like dressed as a detective. Or the mole thing. Whatever the pet looks like. But I forgot to equip it. Oh well. It's fine. I'll equip it in some of the next videos. Yeah, I had a note to self to go ahead and equip that as soon as I got it, but then it looks like I already passed it. One thing I love about like mono white weenies is I feel like all the hands are always good. I'm going to try Skrelv. Anything we play here is likely going to get burnt, unfortunately, and Skrelv is a terrific target. However, if we actually get to keep Skrelv around, then having that protection open for more important things like Warden is going to be really good for us. And it does look like we're going to be able to keep the Skrelv around. Very nice. Glass Casket does pick that up. We could wait for a second. Invasion isn't terrible, but we can't flip it this turn. If we could flip it this turn, then that would probably be the thing to do. If we go Inspector, and we get the Warden down, 1, 2, 3, we could tap Skrelv since it can't block and keep a chump blocker on Inspector. Without the protection open on Skrelv, then Lightning Strike could take out Warden, but that's a Lightning Strike that's not hitting our face. Okay, I don't mind that. I'm going to keep the chump blocker on the Inspector here. The 2-3 is unlikely to survive if it attempts to block like the Commando. Knight-Errant is pretty good. I'm going to keep that on top. Yeah, so if we tapped Inspector, Skrelv, and Clue and kept a 2-3 to block the etching, I'd much rather attempt the chump block into the Scoundrel as... Okay, Lightning Strike that's not hitting our face, guys. That should be good news, and we do have that chump. Wait a minute. If we chump, we won't have... Taking 5 down to 11. We go Knight-Errant for 2 with the... Now, next turn isn't going to be a Knight-Errant turn anyways. I am going to chump here, unfortunately. Down to 14. Anything that slows down mono red is pretty good. We're going to take the turn to establish some things. We're going to go Glass Casket onto Scoundrel, take 1 down to 13. It's not terrible, but it's not great either. Skrelv can't block. We got to remember that. And then the question here is, are we going to keep Skrelv as protection for Recruitment Officer? And I think the answer is no. Just going to swing. We're going to get the ball rolling, I suppose. A couple awkward turns there, I would say, based on how I decided to play it out. Bloodthirsty Adversary. Luckily, they missed their third here. I think we gladly take that trade. No, we don't. We need to get this Knight-Errant on the board to block better, but down to 9's really bad too. Oh, crap. See, we could see a Plains off the top, then Knight-Errant comes down anyways. Virtue. Okay, yeah, no, it's Knight-Errant, right? I believe so. A Witchstalker Frenzy would be particularly bad, but... Regal Bunnicorn. Heck yeah, dude. And then Cheeky House Mouse. Recruitment Officer. Anything's pretty good here, actually. Hopeful Initiate would be decent as well. I actually think it's Initiate. There's a possibility. We see Mono Red playing like End the Festivities every now and then. And Initiate doesn't get picked up by End the Festivities, but like Recruitment Officer and the House Mouse does. And so does Skrelv too, so. Yeah, we gladly attempt the block here. It is going to be a Witch Stalker Frenzy. Well, like I said, that is particularly bad. It's a Monstrous Rage too. We're in big trouble, bro. Or anything, really. Oh, buddy. Down to 2 and holding on for dear life. Invasion of Gobakhan would not be a bad thing to play here. Here into their hand. Let's not forget, Bloodthirsty Adversary now has Trample too. So without a blocker. Uh-oh. Uh-oh, guys. I was thinking like Invasion of Gobakhan, make a play with fire cost 4. We could easily find the land. But without a blocker on the ground, the adversary pushes the trample through anyways. So we could get a blocker on the ground. Then there's like 1,000 other things that could work in their favor too. All right. I think this is heavily leaning towards the opponent after that last turn. Oh, crap. Double Godric. So they have Godric next turn regardless. At that point, we can get Warden down. And we do have this. 1, Glass Casket. Skrelv can't block. Honestly, not half bad, dude. No swing. So Godric comes down and 2 gets through no matter what. So there was a small chance. Maybe it was like Godric and a land, for example, right? So either way, we're going to be taking 2 damage here. So I would say those are the best blocks if we weren't dying that turn. That was probably my fault, honestly. Well, maybe, I mean, you know, Mono Red doing the Mono Red thing. I kind of feel like there was a lineup somewhere there where we could have optimized those plays. That's one to potentially go back and check out and see. As I feel like I played it out a little bit awkwardly, especially at the beginning. Skrelv not doing too much against Mono Red there. I mean, there's a reason we play 2 Skrelvs and not 4, right? Skrelv is still going to be terrific, but in that particular matchup, I wonder if just having a creature that was able to block would have helped a little bit more. Okay, not bad. Not bad at all, dude. We'll probably play Skrelv again, right? All these 1-mana cards and like how they work together is just so neat to me. Skrelv might not make it out of this turn 1, unfortunately. Oh, Frontliner. All right. Well. Just like dump stuff onto the board, I suppose. Like keeping Skrelv open again as protection is going to be much better than blocking here, right? So we go you. Keep Skrelv as protection. Planes we don't need. We have the 3rd one in hand. Although in that last game, the 4th planes would have been pretty good. No attacks. Yeah, when you look at a board state like this and you say, wow, that was a turn 2, like it's relatively impressive how much you can dump onto the board when you just play with, I don't even know, 31 drops, right? So you take the 1 here. Okay. It's just too open. It's got to be like a Lightning Helix or something, I would expect. This is sorcery speed, unfortunately. So what we... And that's sorcery speed, too. If it's Lightning Helix, then we want to keep the Skrelv back no matter what. We could try to do as much as possible and go full swing, flip the case. Not flip the case, solve the case. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I think we're just going to go squeak by. Keep the Skrelv as protection because, boy, this feels like something. You know what I mean? We can go for the swing. Or we could, yeah. We go for the swing. We play this. We'll have 1, 2, 3. Oh, but then we're still tapping Skrelv down. So I should have just went for a swing with Warden then. And kept the Inspector back. Right? I should have put the cheeky House Mouse ability on the Warden, swung with that. Then we had Inspector, Clue, House Mouse to tap. Because now, if I do this ability, we won't have Skrelv open. So unfortunately, I missed a counter this turn because of that. Absolute reinforcements. Okie dokies. This is sorcery speed, so we can't do this at the end now. So we just have the Skrelv open here. Could be Boros go wide. It sure is Boros go wide. At that point, they're going to think that they can outpace us, especially now that War Leader's Call is on the board. So let's see that swing. 1 to 3, a trade into... A trade into the frontliner isn't bad, but they get to bring it back, and then that'll deal 1 there. So a trade into this wouldn't be terrible, but I'm just going to bank on us being able to outpace them, even though now that War Leader's Call is on the board, we are likely in danger. Inspector, very nice. Great draw. Okay. So, like, case solving this turn isn't terrible. 1, 2, 3 for the Warden. Frontliner still not the greatest target here, so I'll just go to the reinforcements. Like, keeping this in hand for something better wouldn't be a bad thing, but 1, 2, 3. Initiate. We're at 12. Unlikely to die next turn. I'm actually going to keep Initiate on top. That's a really tough decision. Could also get Warden Vigilance in the air here, too. But I want to flip the case is the thing. Down to 10. Skrelv available without taking damage, thanks to the planes being open here. And with the case being solved... Yeah, dude, a ton of damage on this board. Let's see what the opponent ends up pulling off. Frontliner. Yeah, if we send Hopeful Initiate to the bottom, we could end up just seeing like a plains on top, which would be really bad. Going wide here, we might be able to get Warden in the air. And their plan is probably just to swing still, now that they still have 3 on the ground. They decide not to. So getting Warden in the air is probably the best bet. Man, tough decisions. Initiate blocks on the ground a little bit better than the Inspectors right now. This trades into a little bit more too. If we see where all they trade Frontliners, so they can bring those back with the War Leader's Call, dealing damage to us, right? And then they still get the swings on those too. If we go Skrelv ability onto House Mouse Call White, the Frontliner still gets through. And if we break Blues to see more off the top, we have less to tap for the Warden. Let's go 1, 2, Inspector. Make sure we have as many blockers on the ground as possible. Virtue isn't terrible. We don't have 5 mana yet, though. Okay. Swing. See, still has Vigilance. No matter what, we have to survive next turn, which is the big thing here. More blockers on the ground and protection open for the Warden for potentially lethal damage. Tough decisions, man. I'll tell you what. Hopefully they can't find a way through for that 9 damage. 2 different versions of a very similar deck. This one having red, of course, for the War Leader's Call. And I'm not 100% certain what else. Hey, Bard Baird Beard. Let's go. That'll help them go wide quite effectively. Down to 7 no matter what here then. Down to 7. It looks like. And then down to 6 with the Bard Baird Beard. They go for the swing. Get some great buffs here. We are going to be blocking. So I don't mind trading into you. I don't mind blocking you. I don't mind. For some reason, I thought this Hopeful Initiate was going to be blocking more here. Taking 2 down to 5, then down to 1, and then our 5 gets 3 in the air. Right? I don't mind a lot of these trades. Down to 4. And we could draw with the shoe, but I'm not gonna. I was gonna say I'm not gonna hold the opponent up any further. You guys like how I called the clue the shoe? That's funny, actually. Actually, I'm probably not alone on that because it's literally just a shoe on the artwork. A lot of great things happening there, man. Case of the Gateway Express was excellent. Good stuff. Good stuff. For some reason, I was thinking the Initiate was going to be a 2-3. Case of the Gateway Express is only +1/+0, not +1/+1. And if it was +1/+1, then the Initiate and the Inspector would have been blocking the same anyways. So not 100% certain what I was thinking there. We could have played Initiate and then tapped that down since it had the Summoning Sickness, but we weren't swinging on the ground regardless. So yeah, since the opponent was tapped out there, if they weren't tapped out, I was going to play that out completely, and we would have gotten rid of a clue just to see more off the top total. All right, no breaks, mono white. Seems solid so far. Although, I haven't been playing it too cautiously, right? We called it no breaks. I hope I haven't been putting the brakes on too much here. All right. Opponent, what you bringing to the table, buddy? Rocking that Jace avatar. Has me a little bit concerned. Should I be scared? Go as fast as possible, I suppose, right? A terrific hand, dude. What do I even... I guess more damage with Officer, and since we have 2 of them, too. Okay, we're gonna try to go as fast as possible. So Initiate and Warden, and then just buff Warden instead of swinging 2. See, does this count as putting on the brakes? Keep the land on top. Okay, tapped land, thank goodness. It's gonna be a cut down for the Warden. That is particularly bad, isn't it? You guys don't suppose this is the type of deck that would be running a 3-mana board wipe, do you? Well, if it is what it is, I suppose. Let's start with the swing. 4 damage getting through. Hopefully we don't end up losing by getting them down to 2. And I'm not playing around the board wipe. We're just going, bro. Let's see what happens. Path of Peril would be... Yeah, GG opponent. Wow. How about that, huh? Yeah, Path of Peril would be the potential 3-mana board wipe there. That would be in a Dimir-style build. And Path of Peril, like, would mean that this is potentially like an Esper build or a Dimir Splash of White as well. With our current board state, we had 10 damage. 10 damage. With only 1 card in hand, the full swing next turn was actually going to solve the Case of the Gateway Express, so it probably would have been worth playing there too. Especially since it's an extra permanent to buff the Unicorn, so that would have been 11. Either way, early on there, where I ended up tapping the 3 down just to buff the Warden, maybe that wasn't the correct call, and we should have just swung with Recruitment Officer to get that damage through. And then a much better thing there, instead of like having Initiate in hand, would have been our other Detective that gives us the clue, and that way we could have tapped those down and still got the swing for 2 through, which is actually... kind of insane to think about, right? Like crazy, crazy lines of play. I bet that concede came from the Bunnicorn. I think that was the main card on board. Because that's just such an excessive amount of extra damage. However, that being said, in a deck like the opponent was running, or potentially running, like Go for the Throats are very popular to play. Okay, we keep this. Knight-Errant potentially restocking our hand beautifully. Novice Inspector calls human. Okay. That could be a problem, especially... I'm gonna go Officer here. Hopefully Thalia doesn't come down, dude. Thalia would be pretty bad for this hand. It's gonna be more Boros, actually. I don't think this Boros build runs Thalia because, yeah, they have... Okay. That's a problem, dude. That's a problem. They decide that keeping creatures is actually much more beneficial than a trade for them. I happen to agree. Now, how much do we want to slow them down for the turn? Invasion of Gobakhan definitely not flipping anytime soon. We just go, like... They buff this board state, it's what, 8 damage? If a War Leader's Call. A really slow turn. It's a really slow turn compared to what the opponent just did. But, like, I don't mind this right now. I wouldn't mind seeing more land here, but I also don't mind the Novice Inspector. Potentially buff that Warden further. So 3rd mana, War Leader's Call, swing for 8. Are we going to be able to keep up pace with 8 damage coming through after the War Leader's Call comes down? Emmadane's Recruiter, same concept, except it's an extra 3. So we're taking 11 damage here on their turn 3. Recruiter is rough business, man. Well, I didn't mind the Inspector. We're going to have to keep blockers back. And usually I feel like this wouldn't be bad at all. But now I think they're pushing lethal next turn. So maybe Bunnicorn to block? A little awkward though, huh? Because we could have sent Inspector to find some more land. See, we could have went Invasion, took out like an Emmadane's Recruiter, and then swung 2 officers at the Gobakhan. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and we're kind of like... I think we're forced to keep the blockers back here. Epic here. Luckily, not Emmadane's Recruiter number 2 or a War Leader's Call, so we might actually still be in this for a turn. A blood token, they're going to go ahead and send a Sanguine Evangelist, which in fact is not a human, so they have no white source here for the Evangelist, which is probably a good thing because the battle cry on Evangelist is very powerful. Actually, something to consider for this build, should this have at least been in the honorable mentions? Kind of overlooked Evangelist. Maybe. Maybe so. Oh, bro, they're still doing things. Okay. Okay. Another mana. How do we get around that, huh? And they have their own Bunnicorn in hand. Yeah, the nice thing about going like a monocolored list that's so similar is like we don't run into this issue of like Cavern of Souls not being able to play their Rabbit Unicorn. Give me 1 second, opponent, buddy. If we play Inspector... Invasion could still take out like a Emmadane's Recruiter quite successfully here. I suppose we see what's in their hand. Like, Virtue of Loyalty is not bad to drop on their turn after a swing. But, like, at the same... Oh, my goodness. Everything in their hand they can't play because of their mana issue right now. As soon as they find that white source, though, War Leader's Call is probably the pick, right? We can't let them buff that wide board state. At that point, more blockers on the ground is totally fine. This also buffs the Regal Unicorn quite successfully. We might be able to get a swing with the Regal Bunnicorn, actually. Might be able to flip the Invasion. Based on what they have in hand, do we end up surviving? I think they actually end up blocking here, guys. Or they could get an Emmadane's Recruiter off the top. But the big thing here is we could sacrifice Light Shield Array to give our blockers indestructible, potentially. So this can only do artifacts and creatures, and we want to keep everything else back. Bunnicorn gets a counter. See what they find. They might go draw on... It's going to be an Imodane's Recruiter off the top, dude. Holy cow, what a draw for the opponent, man. That's it, right? I think, yeah. Yeah, we are super dead. A terrific top deck there. That's rough business, man. Right, yeah. So like I said, they could totally successfully find that Imodane's Recruiter, and it was. Is Imodane's Recruiter a 4 of? Good game, opponent. Good game. Oh, guys, I didn't bring the deck tracker back up. We had a crash in the last video I recorded, and it kind of messed up the deck tracker, so I had to close out of it, and then I forgot to bring it up. But this is like the perfect deck to have the deck tracker up and running for. That way we could actually see how many games we ended up playing, right? Because games and a build like this could go really fast. So honestly, no idea how many we played. Did we play 5 already? Maybe. Maybe like 4. It seems to be doing like somewhere in the middle, right? About 2 and 2 maybe so far. Not 100% certain. When it goes first, this is not a bad hand. No great ways to buff these initiates, but like 1,000 ways to buff them in the build. With the buff, of course, I'm talking the training. I don't know. I guess we keep this. Glass Casket would have been terrific in the last one too. With the top deck like theirs, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of actual ways through. I guess we attempt the Skrelv. Like, it could be initiate number 1, let them take care of that. But at the same time, I think the double initiates is going to be a little bit better than the Skrelv. Regardless there, we were anticipating spot removal, and I valued the initiates over the Skrelv. Okay, Phyrexian Missionary. Invasion of Gobakhan, not terrible. The life gain on this could be really bad. Alright, initiate. Initiate. Get those nice and established. Get those creatures down. In the trenches, not terrible. No blocks. We go back up to 20. Okay, Rowan. Oh. Oh my. X is the amount of life you lost. Okay. Mardu something. So in the trenches, initiates get to 2-3. I don't think they end up trading there. We're going to take a little bit of damage if that's what we end up doing. Just like Glass Casket onto Rowan isn't bad. And then Cheeky House Mouse was also a pretty good draw. Because what it ends up allowing us to do is buff the second initiate with training. So it's still going to be 4 here instead of just playing like in the trenches. In this scenario, though, we ended up being able to use some of our spot removal, which was pretty good. Virtue of Persistence, back up to 16. Swing, back up to 18. Okay. In the trenches is probably a little bit better as a surprise after we get a little bit more established here. Cheeky House Mouse is probably the play. Well, let's start with Invasion of Gobakhan, actually. Once we get that down and established, the in the trenches surprise is even better if we're able to actually get the Invasion of Gobakhan flipped. Hopeful initiate looks like it might be some more spot removal, unfortunately. It's going to be a cut down for the initiate. So either way, this was still pretty good, but they wanted to do that before we made their card too expensive. Which, hopefully, hitting the Ashiok there, making it so that way if they top deck a land, that it's not that great for them, right? Cheeky House Mouse is probably better than Inspector in this scenario, because if they swing with Missionary to gain life and we go in the trenches, then House Mouse can flip the invasion. depending on what they see, of course. It is going to be land, and their Ashiok is nerfed, luckily. So, gaining a lot of life here. Glass Casket, I don't think is the play for the turn. We're going to flip that Invasion. Not bad, not bad. We get a counter onto the House Mouse. We have the Light Shield Array ability now, too. Hopefully we can start to do some damage. 2 cutdowns and a Virtue of Persistence isn't even that much removal. It really feels like a lot of removal here, though. Oh, Trumpeting Connoisseur. Losing the Light Shield Array doesn't seem great, but keeping a 4/3 House Mouse does feel great. Let's do that, I guess. Tough decision, man, for sure. Warden of the Inner Sky is terrific. Let's get rid of their life gain here. Warden is 1, 2, 3 there, so we do get the swing. And then because the Glass Caskets are artifacts, we do get to go U. Virtue of Loyalty. I say we keep it, right? Just more creatures, and we could actually save this open for their turn, like at the end of their turn, if they end up finding a board wipe or something. Speaking of, oh, they pass it back. We're going to go Novice Inspector before combat. They do want to remove the Warden. Okay. Now, is it going to be Virtue? That's pretty bad for us. Going to be Virtue for their turn, or do we want to double down on map tokens? I think it's Virtue at the end of their turn. Because Virtue will get the buff from in the trenches as well, and that would be 9 on our board. Staff of Completion gives them a little bit of ramp, but they have to pay life to do so. Virtue. Or I should say Ardenvale Fealty here, right? Ooh, another Warden. Okay. I'm going to go 1 of the maps onto the Knight to get it around like a top deck Virtue of Persistence or something. See if we can get a counter here. It's going to be a Hopeful Initiate. I'm actually going to send it because I wouldn't mind more mana. Still have the 1. Still have the tap. So we're going to go again. We're going to go onto the cheeky House Mouse this time. Same concept, get it around like a top deck Virtue of Persistence. We're going to find the mana, actually. And so now if we see another Plains at some point, Virtue can come down. We'll swing for 10 here. What are the odds of them dropping a board wipe, guys? Do we save Warden in case they top deck a board wipe? Probably. We could have dropped Warden and had Glass Casket and then the clues to tap and buff, but what if they see like a burn down the house off the top? Then we need a way to reestablish the board state. It's gonna be Trumpeting Connoisseur. Nice. Guys, we really slowed them down there. Good game, opponent. They gained a ton of life with the life... with their Phyrexian Missionaries lifelink there. They gained life off of Virtue of Persistence, too. However, we were just very, very persistent in and of ourselves. Cool deck, though, opponent. Rocking some Rakdos Rowan, or Mardu Rowan, right? Very cool. How far are we, guys? 43 minutes in? Okay, let's do this. Let's go one more game. Win or lose, I'm very satisfied with how the deck has been playing out. It feels relatively solid. And then, like I said too, when we were up against the Boros version of this list, they do get to play some really cool, really powerful cards, but we don't run into the same issue of like mana base nearly as much, right? Okay, we go first. I think this is a completely fine hand. Start with Recruitment Officer. Any one drop off the top would be decent if we can get like turn 3 Bunnicorn down. Like 1 drop 2 turns in a row is completely fine. Looks like the opponent had to mulligan. Luckily they're on the draw. Replenish that card. A Valkyrian Epicure, or Valdaran Epicure. Glass Casket, that'll probably come in handy when it comes time. Let's see if they end up chumping here. Go for the swing. I think they take the 3. Depending on what their deck is trying to do, of course. And I think with Epic here, we have to anticipate more Boros, man. We've been seeing a lot of it. It is going to be some Boros. And so, yeah, getting that 3 through now is pretty good. Our hand is pretty well set up to handle Boros, hopefully. It's funny how it ends up being kind of sort of a mirror match. Another 1-drop, pretty good. These all trade in. They want as many creatures on the board as possible. They might be anticipating, like, trying to outpace us. Bunnicorn Initiate for the turns. Pretty good. Getting Bunnicorn pretty stacked. Glass Casket removal on the Inspector getting 4 through. Just doesn't seem nearly as good, huh? Let's see what they end up doing here. They very well might take the trade, and if they do, it's 1 less creature on their board. And if they don't, it's 4 damage coming through to their face. So all of that is decent. Initiate. Bunnicorn. That's a 4/4. It's pretty good, man. Glass Casket and Virtue both being pretty good cards in hand, so even a mana off the top wouldn't be a bad thing. So any land off the top and any 1-drop off the top would be really good for us, and we have a very high chance of seeing any of that. Or a 3-drop off the top, which would be our In the Trenches to buff our board state, would not be a bad thing either. Lethal Demolition going nice and wide. Chump blockers for days. They're going to take out that Bunnicorn with Case of the Gateway Express, unfortunately. Losing the Bunnicorn could be... Oh, they're still going. They're still going. Knight-Errant can't get picked up by the Glass Casket. Cheeky House Mouse. Definitely helping us squeak by here. No great targets for the Glass Casket. Might mean we just keep Virtue open for their turn. Initiate will get buffed, but will get blocked. We get any amount through and they have that block with Knight-Errant, that's pretty bad. And it would be there. We get 5 through down to 8. Uh-oh, guys. The opponent had a really clean turn. A really, really clean turn. This is tough. I'm actually just going to go for the swing and see if they take it. They don't know what's in hand. We could potentially have a combat trick, and at this point... Okay. So we could have gotten 1 extra through with the squeak by, but this is also totally fine. Because now we can just play this as a 2/1, replenish 1 creature on the board, and then have Virtue open as a potential combat trick. However, there's a chance that we just die this turn too, right? Like Emodane's Recruiter comes down with their 1-drop, gives their 1-drop haste. Start with Epic here. If it is Recruiter, then we potentially die this turn. Looks like they're playing it a little bit safe. Alright, Virtue. I don't want to lose the cheeky House Mouse, so we're just taking 2 here. We don't know what that last card in hand is. Could be like another Knight-Errant. They do solve the Case of the Gateway Express, though. Okay, so that's a problem. Warden of the Inner Sky is pretty good. Probably would have been a little bit better early on, but I'm trying to think of when we would have had a great chance to actually tap things down, too. Glass Casket was waiting for a better target. But... at this point, is it just like one of the goblins? Inspector, maybe? If we do any amount of tapping down for a counter on the Warden... 1, 2, 3... We'll have 3 blockers remaining. One of them would be chumping. I think since we're in danger either way, I think we go for this. I think we just go for this anyways. Planes off the top, probably not the best thing to see. Even though that gets us one step closer to the virtue of loyalty, we're not in a great position to like see land off the top for the next 2 turns. Virtue of loyalty would be really good, but another thing that would be really good is like Case of the Gateway Express of our own, as we would be able to hit this Knight-Errant quite successfully. Blood token, trade out a Cavern of Souls. At any moment we could lose. Resolute Reinforcements. They still have 3 mana open, guys. It could be Emodane's Recruiter. And if it was War Leader's Call, they would have done that before the reinforcements to ping our face for 2. Yeah, our own case with this huge uptick in the amount of this go wide Boros strategy, it is gonna be an Emodane's Recruiter. Oh my goodness, dude. Holy cow. Forced to chump there for sure, and we're at 15. 1, 2, oh, that's 15 damage. Good game opponent. So we could have held back a little bit more, but we would have had terrible blocks even if we did hold back. We would have been going down really low, and the opponent still wouldn't have been losing too much overall. GG, buddy. Oh, man. Oh, but I do think, technically speaking, that when we are up against these Boros builds, I do think technically it could be anyone's game. You know what I mean? I don't think either one of us is necessarily favored. Okay, guys. No breaks mono white, or mono white weenies, whatever you want to call it. Here's the list again. Some noteworthy things. I would have loved to see Case of the Gateway Express a little bit more today. It really seemed quite powerful, actually. I like this little guy. I think I gotta play with it in some more builds. At some point, do we gotta visit the Go Wide Boros? Maybe. It just seems so popular that, like, you guys know what I mean? It seems so popular that I don't want to dabble with it as of right now. Also, we just did the Go Wide Soldier build with War Leader's Call too, so it might be a second before we revisit something like that. Either way, Case of the Gateway Express, dude, yeah. Seeing our own in that match would have been excellent. 20 land felt pretty good. That being said, there's going to be plenty of moments where you just won't be able to play this Virtue of Loyalty, so that's something that I could see dropping down to 1. Now, the instant speed creature does actually come in handy quite often, though. And when you do end up getting enough mana, then the Virtue of Loyalty is terrific, dude, especially if you're in like a locked down board state. Like we could have potentially been in a locked down board state in that last game. The only way to actually like get to that state though would have been seeing more mana in general for the entire match to actually get to that 5. When we saw that Plains on the top, we ended up sending it because it wouldn't have been the 5th. If it would have been the 5th, then maybe we would have kept that land, played it, Virtue of Loyalty. I don't think we had terrific swings, but it doesn't really matter as now we're buffing our whole board state by a +1/+1 counter every single turn. Maybe that would have done more. So like that being said, why drop a Virtue of Loyalty? Instead, maybe we just go up a mana, up to 21. At that point, maybe you end up flooding out way more than you would ever want. That being said as well, though, there's plenty of moments where we want to do 2 mana things on the same turn, right? Play a Bunnicorn and keep the Ardenvale Fealty open, or Bunnicorn, Glass Casket, or Gobakhan and a couple cheeky House Mouse, or, you know, there'll be plenty of moments where you actually want to see the 4th mana. So going up the 21 land might not even be that bad. Again, if you end up flooding out 2, might get closer to like the 6 mana on the In the Trenches, or actually being able to play a 2 mana card on the same turn as going for Knight-Errant of Eos. So like, for example, if you had 4 mana and you play a 2 mana Bunnicorn, then you have the 2 mana open, you can tap the Bunnicorn and a couple other creatures. Like, there's a lot of instances where Knight-Errant ends up being a little bit too expensive just because you're 1 mana short, so. Yeah. Do we want 21 land? Let me know. I could see dropping 1 Skrelv for it. I still like Skrelv, though. I think there's going to be so many moments where that protection is just absolutely terrific, and then there's going to be a lot of other moments where it also helps you get that last bit of damage through. For example, You got Warden of the Inner Sky flying in the air, and you go Skrelv on your Regal Bunnicorn, call black or something to slip by their Shieldred. That sounds really powerful. And so dropping a Skrelv for a Plains might be silly. As a matter of fact, if you go up to 21, I could easily see it just being a second Seat of the Empire too. Plenty of builds where just having 2 of these legendary lands just don't hold you up at all. Sometimes it will, right? You get one down. What ends up happening then if you really need to play stuff out of your hand is you tap it for a white mana, play the second one, keep the one that was untapped, and then you can tap that one too, which is particularly bad, but it just ends up not being too bad for certain builds. And I think this would be one of those builds where we just wouldn't mind having more removal too. Like Seat of the Empire is a card that could have taken out the Knight-Errant of Eos from that last game, for example. We don't see too much mono blue anymore, but like Hadi Jin is a perfect target for Seat of the Empire too, so. Is that what I would do? Drop a Skrelv, go up a Seat of the Empire? Maybe, maybe. Overall, the deck performed quite well, I would say, and so more testing is required, and outside of that little change, I wouldn't change anything else. Let me know in the comments, what would you guys add or take out? Either way, guys, if you made it this far into the video for real, y'all are champions. Make sure you take a look down in the description. We have that Discord link, as well as that Patreon link if you're interested in supporting the channel that way. Okay, guys, yeah. Did I tell you already that you're champions? Well, if I didn't, y'all are champions. Thanks for watching the video, guys, seriously. And I will see you in the next video.